Well, regarding the outpost, I think it's not so much the capture of this one post strategically that's important. I think it's the trend that we're seeing in terms of rising conflict between the Myanmar military and ethnic armed groups like the Korean National Union. So alongside the protests that I'm sure you're all aware of, there is increased fighting in areas that have been fairly peaceful for the past few years, including Karen State, where this post is located, and also Kachin State in the north, where we've seen the armed groups like the KNU and the KIA trying to retake territory from the military since the coup.
Is this likely, though, to prompt a further military crackdown and further skirmishes between the military and these groups?
Yeah, so last time the Korean National Union took a post like this, we saw a response from the military where they used airstrikes, which really, it underlines the kind of advantage the military has over the armed groups in terms of, they have air power, they have artillery power that these groups don't have. But I think it also reflects the fact that they don't want to commit large numbers of soldiers to try and recapture these posts, partly because they're really tied up in other areas of the country responding to the protests. So there is likely to be a retaliation, but I don't think that it's likely that they'll commit large numbers of forces to a ground offensive. Probably just airstrikes.
Yeah. So to a degree, the concept of these disparate groups teaming up with the protesters might be disrupting the military's agenda. And it was interesting to see that they did, after a meeting with ASEAN over the weekend, announce that they had reached some deal to try and end the violence. What might that look like?
Yeah, so the Myanmar military leader, Min Aung Hlaing, went to Jakarta on Saturday and met other ASEAN leaders. And after the meeting, it was quite long, they released what they called 5-point consensus. One of the points was to stop the violence, to exercise restraint. There's a lot of criticism of that deal. There was no talk of political prisoners, for example, including Aung San Suu Kyi, no talk of releasing her. But still, an agreement seemed like the start of maybe ASEAN being able to exert some influence, positive influence over the military and to stop the violence that we've seen. But after returning to Myanmar, the Senior General Min Aung Hlaing has said, kind of walked back some of those what appeared to be promises and said that the military would consider sticking to that agreement after it ensured stability, which we can interpret as meaning after it has extinguished the protest, basically, and seemingly giving himself a free rein to continue cracking down on protesters and also ethnic armed groups like the Korean National Union.
Yeah. Talking of Aung San Suu Kyi, she had a court appearance again via video today. Her legal team, although they haven't actually seen her in person, say she's frail and thinner than usual. Are we any clearer on her state of health?
No, when you have a court hearing by video conference, it is very difficult. She was looking thinner, according to her lawyer. She has requested to meet in person with her lawyer. I mean, these video calls, there's police, security there. They're not able to talk openly, really. She has made that request and was told that, it's been submitted upstairs to higher authorities and they're waiting for a response. And she was told to be patient. I think, it's very difficult to be patient in this kind of scenario. But it doesn't seem like a fair hearing by any kind of reasonable standard when you don't have access to a lawyer.
Indeed. And the protest movement broadly, Thomas, is it persisting? Is it starting to sort of be worn down, or do they still have the same level of determination?
Well, I think there's kind of 2 points there. I mean, the determination is one point, and I think that determination is still very much there. But we are seeing the protests shift. I mean, in late March and through the first half of April, there was some very, massacres basically of protesters. This confrontation where protesters were setting up barricades and facing off with the armed forces was resulting in a huge number of casualties. And so the protesters in some areas, particularly Yangon and Mandalay, the main cities, have kind of shifted tactics, and they're doing flash protests and other forms of, expressing dissent through other forms where they're less likely to be killed. But in some regional areas, we are still seeing mass protests. In Sagaing region has really, we're even seeing sort of protesters, take up weapons against the military. against the security forces and inflict casualties on them. So it's really a mixed picture, but the determination does still seem to be there. I wouldn't say that the military has crushed dissent by any stretch. I mean, it's still trying to consolidate power after this coup. So 3 months on, it's still facing a lot of challenges.
Indeed. Good to talk, Thomas. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.